God has joined us so closely to the world around us that we feel the desertification of the soul almost as a physical ailment, and the extinction of a species as a painful disfigurement.
In this second chapter of the Pope's Encyclical, he really moves into an area of where the Christian has something to, to donate, to give, to expand on. The very thoughts that we had at the beginning that we have to do something. So he says that all forms of wisdom should be considered here because this is a global crisis. And certainly religion should have a part to play. It's not just a scientific or an economic situation. It's one in which all the philosophies that are related, all are called into being in some way. It's a dialogue. It's an imperative because it's a global undertaking. And so our religious convictions have something to say. We believers are motivated, and we are called to care for our creation. And Christianity then has an essential part, and that it is a responsibility on the part of all the people to respect others. Now that others means more than just other people, and that would be all other people, but it also means all of creation. That respect extends to all beings. We don't disrespect them in any fashion. So if we look more at the light that's coming to us from faith, we see that there is a wisdom, and that wisdom is connected in some way to the Bible itself. And we have that, the accounts of Genesis is the first of the books of the Bible. And that is that God created all things, and then after creating all things, over that long period of time, God rested and saw that it was all good. It was good, and that was the Sabbath. And so as we think about this, the Sabbath in which all of us have, in some fashion, a time of rest, a time of reflection, a 7 times 7, which would be on a Jubilee year, when we would reflect and think about things and pray over them and be thankful for what we've got. The mystery of creation then comes to us in a deeper sense. And we have to have the time to think about that, because if we're activists and active all the time, we just simply don't have enough time to reflect. And we have to have that. Creation can not only be understood as a gift, Pope Francis says, as a gift from the outstretched hands of the Father of all, and as a reality illuminated by the love which calls us together into a universal communion. That's something that we're all one in some fashion. All one people, all one group of the whole family of all creation. So it extends, the beings extend way beyond just our little neighborhood, our own people, our own family. Creation, as St. Basil says, is the Creator is as goodness without is a goodness without measure. God's goodness comes through creation. Nature is not divine, but it has a certain value and a frailty to it. It's not unlimited. These are limited beings and limited things. And at the same time, we don't make them gods. We know that God is unlimited. But we also have a deep respect for them because they're frail, they're vulnerable, they're able to be wounded in some fashion, and we have wounded our earth. And we cannot do this and be faithful to our God. It is important for us to have a sense of respect that covers not only God and our relations with God, but also it covers that of our people. And if we don't have respect for each other, that extends down to the earth and leads to an exploitation, a destruction of things that we were supposed to be stewards of and take care of. And so nature is not divine, and we understand that, but it has its limits, and its limits still allow it to be good. Freedom is to apply our intelligence and everything that we've got to positive benefits for all. It's to protect nature. That's what we're here for, not to dominate over it. And nature is God's art. It's impressed upon things, whereas those things are moved to a determinate end, is what the Pope says. They have a reason for being there. There's a part of the reason for what is beyond just our utility or use, but they are good in themselves. Humans have a unique role, and there we begin to look at more carefully. It's a thou, that means a personal you with another, and we have a thou with God, but that thou really extends itself to each other. And so we as human beings have a certain responsibility, a purpose in which we take care of. And we have this with God's, all of God's creation too. So then he moves into a message of each creature that is in harmony, and that in harmony means harmony with and within creation itself. God, who is perfect harmony, extends to us, and therefore that image that we have, that we are created to God's image, means that we have to act in a godly fashion. And that means that we have to balance, take care of things, each other. War is not, that is chaos. Destruction is chaos. Exploitation for its own sake, or to make us greedy and different from others, that's a form of chaos too. And we are to put order into things, and that means that we have to create balances. Nature already has a balance before the human beings ever came on the scene, and we have to keep that balance going. Therefore, we would all then be in harmony. When we're not, well, things go wrong. And the truth is that things are going wrong, and that's why we have a climate change problem before us, as we mentioned in chapter 1. We have to know ourselves as having a role to play, and, well, we can't just stand back. We have to be immersed in what is knowing the world, and knowing that, and in knowing it, we actually see the world as, and the creatures on it, as teaching us something, if we listen. Therefore, part of our participation is to listen to what others say, and the others include various forms of creation. And then the creature becomes a teacher, and we take a humbling role. And therefore we're called, and we're called to serve others. And the only way we can serve them well is to know what it is and how we can serve them. And therefore, we understand this because we have a certain sense of reverence that all the creatures have and have given us in some way. That sense of harmony includes our protective care of other things. So then we move on to the universal, what the Pope talks about, the universal communion. God has joined us so closely, the Pope says, to the world around us that we feel the desertification of the soil. We mentioned that at the beginning, as though it's a physical ailment. Think of it. We're so close to things that when things are hurt, we're hurt. So our suffering is a sense of compassion, and that is to suffer with another. We are compassionate about each other, human beings, but our compassion extends to the world itself. And so therefore there is a certain universal communion that we have. We are all linked in a universal family by human respect. We don't have the respect, we can't have the union. Therefore, it's a connection we have with others. We can't tolerate, now this becomes an important thing. We can't tolerate inequalities. Now what does that mean? That means we can't allow someone to hurt another. If we were walking down the street and someone hurts another, we have to do something about it. We can't just stand at a distance and observe. We have to do the best we can. Yell, get the police, call 911. We have to do something. But we cannot just allow things to continue in their own way. That is not tolerating. That is intolerance. Some waste and regard of others must be, therefore, not tolerated, but it's challenged. We have to, in some ways, he uses the word dialogue in parts of this, but we have to see that this is unworthy and express the fact that they do not have a ability to take over certain aspects of our world and use them like they got. We continue to tolerate that some consider themselves more human than others, as if they have been born with greater rights. That's the Pope himself speaking. So therefore, compassion for endangered species, brother sun, sister moon, mother earth, these things that, well, St. Francis talked about, is also what we have to do as being people. We do not tolerate cruelty. We must oppose human trafficking. We must extend love to all our human beings and to others. There's a common destiny, the Pope goes on to say, of all goods. The principle of a subordination of private property to the universal destination of goods, and thus the right of everyone to their use, is a golden rule of the social conduct and the first principle of the whole ethical and social order. And we should talk about a moment, because the social order is that very harmony we have to help bring about and make it something that the whole world experiences and enjoys. Private property, yes, the Pope even admits we have to have a certain amount of private property. But private property does not mean we take over the commons and therefore exclude others from it. No, Pope St. John Paul II said God gave the earth to the whole human race for sustenance of all, and the emphasis being on all. It's a gift from God, but it's not given to certain ones to have enormous privilege. It has to be given for the benefit of everyone. All have a right for a home. All have a right for education. All have a right for credit, insurance, markets. We have a right to these things. We have a right to food. We have a right to water. Others don't have a right to take it over and control it. So therefore we look at these, and with the sense of rights that we have, and we can call into question those who are what some have called the ones who kill. They kill when 20% of the world, it says in this letter, 20% of the world will take over and have control over large portions, and others are without. Both those living today and also future generations. He comes to the end of this section, which is somewhat difficult, but it's important, because there's been so much of a so-called justification of exploiting things, because it talks about dominion. And we, in the way in which we present it here, think of dominion as being respect for, love for, service to other things. That's what dominion is, to be like the Lord. And so when we come to the gaze of Jesus himself, we remember he came to serve us. He came to show us how we are to be people who truly believe in and follow his examples. And so we think of him, and many times in which he talked about the various areas of harmony, fields white with the harvest, talked about the mustard seed that grows into the great plant. He talks about the harmony of creation itself, the storms that had to be obeyed. And therefore, even the storms themselves, Christ had such a harmony in creation that he was able to touch or speak, and these things came about. We've got to remember that Jesus, for 30 years, was mostly at his home of his 33. And therefore he was considered a carpenter, one who worked with their hands, moved and improved things that were natural material things. And therefore God-man comes down among us in the incarnated event, and God-man allows himself to be one with us, and matter takes on a sacred character itself. And so the mystery of Christ is at work in the hidden way, in the natural world as a whole, without therefore impinging on its autonomy, is what the Pope says. And so at the end we think about that we're called in a certain way to show the respect and the harmony that is needed, and that the two work together. We can't be disrespectful to each other or to the world around us. We have to treat everything as part of God's gift to us and with us. Thank you.